A very warm welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Michelle Viar. I'm the founder of the Women's Chapter. And today I'm being joined by Michelle Viar, who is the founder of Thoroughbrand Digital. Very honored to have you as our digital partners for the Women's Chapter, but also to have you here with us, Michelle. I know how busy you are at the moment, so incredibly grateful that we have this time with you to get a little more insight around how we can really understand what our digital needs are before we go ahead and spend too much money on them. So, Michelle, I'd like to hand over to you to introduce yourself to everyone and tell us a little bit more about your background, and then we can launch into the theme for today's masterclass.
Perfect. Thank you, Michelle, which is so awkward. I will change my name eventually. I'm Michelle Viar. I am, as Michelle Viar said, founder of Thoroughbrand Digital. We've been an independent agency for almost 7 years now. I spent my career in big agencies, so WPP, Jellyfish, serious performance digital agencies rather than creative agencies, and left about 7 years ago and decided to do what I wanted to do, which was work with clients that I like, be completely honest and transparent, because me and everyone who works on my team, we all worked at big agencies together. We've all known each other for a really long time. And we all had the same issue, which is that we see clients constantly overcharged. And I think I've probably told this story before on a previous masterclass, but I will again. The day I left WPP was when I was asked to sign an invoice for $48,000 for 16 minutes of work. Not work that I did, work that somebody else allegedly did. And it's obscene. It's the way that big agencies roll. It's the way a lot of middle-sized agencies go. So we are very transparent in our pricing and our billing and everything that we do. We're very results oriented. And that's who we are as Thoroughbrand. And that's a little bit similar to what we're going to talk about today. I usually, when I get into the meat of the presentation, I turn off my camera because I'm more comfortable presenting when people aren't staring at me. So I'm going to turn off my camera and just get into presenting. If anybody has any, I think Michelle or Terrence sent an email just saying, if you have any questions, I want this to be more of a discussion. Anybody who was at the masterclass on Know Your Audience, that was almost a lecture in a way, because that's my specialty, is audience identification and persona work. So this I want to be more of a discussion because this is a broad topic. This is a huge topic. Lots of people have lots of different questions around digital, what they need, what their needs are, what stages do they change their needs, change their agencies, change their staffing. And once we started to get into it, my team and I looked at it actually last week and thought, this is a huge topic. So it's going to be a lot more, I think, prescient and relevant to people who are on the call if we actually discuss things that are important to you. So I'll just encourage you to pop things into the chat. If you have questions, put them in the chat and I'll answer them as we go, because I think it's going to be a lot more beneficial for everybody. So if that is all okay with everyone, I'm going to stop my video and share my screen, and feel free to ask any questions. And if I don't get to them at that time, I will promise you I will get to them. And
Michelle, I think it's also worth adding, because I know you've developed an amazing resource for today, is that people will receive copies of the slides and the information that Michelle's collated as part of the follow-up along with the recording. So, really do kind of sit back, relax, fire away your questions. You don't have to be taking notes. Over to you, Michelle. And I'm going to remove myself from Spotlight as well so that we can focus very much on the presentation.
Yeah, I've just had a little problem. Hang on. Which is really strange. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to reshare my screen and everybody just tell me if you can see it. I'm just going to share the entire screen. It's just easier. You'll see all of my 37 tabs that are open. So can everybody see this?
No, I can just see, we can just see your name.
Really?
There, now, yes, now we can see.
Okay, if that's big enough for everybody, I'm going to leave it in this mode so that I can actually also go back and forth and see comments. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah, that's fine. I think
cool.
It's
the first class that we did was Know Your Audience, and I think probably there's a chance that we should have done this one first in terms of know your digital needs. But as I said, audience identification is first for us always, because if you know your audience, it helps you know a lot of other things. So today we're going to talk about knowing your digital needs, and we're going to start with something that I think may seem kind of basic to people, and I don't want it to seem overly basic. I just want people to be aware that there are different sorts of agencies. So we're going to go through a few things. We're going to go through, do you need an agency? Do you need one at all? Like, at what stage can you do things yourself? Because usually at the very beginning of a process and at the very end of a process, you don't need one. You can do it yourself. So we're going to talk through the various stages of progress from brand inception all the way through to brand maturity. And so on that note, brand life cycles and appropriate tactics for each stage. Then once you start to go through the stages, how do you know when it's appropriate to move to the next stage? How do you know when you're ready? So on that note, how do you measure success or know when it's time to progress? What are the common pitfalls to avoid? I've put those in here as caveats, but instead, I also want you guys to mention any pitfalls that you've seen in your careers or in your business, and any questions and comments and examples that you might have. We've got a couple of examples in here. We've had a recent one with a horror story with a client. I've actually included it in the deck without naming who the client is. They're in the US anyway, but really, we first want to talk about, do you need an agency? Okay, so if you need an agency, what type? There are generally 3-4 types of agencies. They're the creative agency who only do creative. There's a PR agency who specialize in PR. There are digital agencies, but then sort of a subset of that is digital performance agencies. We are a digital performance agency. So I would actually say we're digital, with about 80% of our work being digital performance. And I'll get to what that means in a minute. So then there are also full service traditional advertising agencies, which historically came out of, if you imagine, the Mad Men era. Creative branding, have really good relationships with media. So what we really want to do is sort of unconfuse this for people. Say, let's look at the landscape, make sure that you know what you have, what you need, so that you're not sold services that you don't need, so that you don't spend money where you shouldn't, and so that you can actually help prioritize your goals for your brand. So this may seem like sort of basic learnings, but creative agencies are exactly what they sound like. They excel in brand identities, design, brand content across mediums. They're adept at delivering unique and memorable brand experiences. They have a lot of expertise in graphic design, copywriting, and storytelling. And for those of you who've never heard me speak before, I'm very direct. I just say it because I don't waste time and money, and I don't want other people to waste time and money. So there's a caveat, sort of a caveat emptor on every one of these, which is never let a creative agency build your website or run your campaigns, even organic social media campaigns. I feel really strongly about this. Creative agencies, creative teams, I've worked with 100 creative directors in my life. None of them ever cared about the performance. They want to make things pretty. So if you want your site to perform, if you want your campaigns to perform, you don't let your creative agencies build your websites or run your campaigns. PR specializes in managing a brand's reputation and building relationships with the public, media outlets, and key stakeholders. They excel in crafting narratives, managing crisis situations, and securing media coverage. They employ a lot of communication strategies to shape public perception. They enhance your credibility. I am going to caveat this 2 ways. Never let a PR agency build your website or run your paid campaigns, and be wary of PR agency metrics. PR agency metrics are not performance metrics, so they're not actually anything that someone in a performance digital agency would look at and learn anything from. So I would just say views, reach, that sort of thing are great from a sort of high level touchy-feely point of view, but they're not anything that means anything to someone who works in a performance digital agency. And never let them run your paid campaigns, with one caveat. Sponsored content, I find PR agencies to be really good at. And on all of these, there's a use for all these agencies. So I don't want you to think that I'm saying never use them in general. They all have their strengths. We work with a lot of PR agencies, very good PR agencies. And I would never, ever condone not using them when it's appropriate. But there are just certain things that some agencies have their strengths in, and that's what they need to stick to. Digital, so this is sort of, there's more on here, obviously, because this is what I know more about, but I also want to really explain digital performance. A digital agency focuses on leveraging all the digital platforms to drive brand awareness, engagement, and conversion. So these are when we talk about from brand inception to growth and maturity as the 3 stages, awareness, engagement, and conversion go right in line with those. So awareness is what you want to do at brand inception, engagement is what you want to do for growth, and conversion is what you want to do at maturity, and then build, sort of rinse and repeat. We excel in areas like website design and development, SEO, which is one of our specialties, social media marketing, all forms of online advertising. Digital agencies are skilled in utilizing data and analytics to optimize digital campaigns. We deliver measurable results. And I think measurable results is what's really important to digital agencies and to really good digital agencies. If your agency isn't providing you with reporting weekly, monthly, or whenever you ask for it, and it's not in depth and doesn't tell you exactly what they've done, how it impacted you positively or negatively, and what they're going to do next as a learning as a result from that, you might want to revisit your digital agency relationship. I have a caveat on these, just like I do on the others. Never expect your digital agency to be your creative agency or to pander to extended creative demands. We're nerds. We're data scientists and nerds. We're not designers. We care about the audience. We care about the performance. We care about reaching the right people, getting your return on your investment, ROAS, which is return on ad spend, your share of voice, the things that we actually measure for digital success. So we're not as concerned with building something creative for you. So that is something that a real digital, and especially a digital performance agency, are not going to excel at. I'm not saying they won't offer it or won't offer it to you or do it for you, but they're not going to be your best brand builder from a purely creative point of view. A performance digital agency places a really strong emphasis on achieving really specific marketing objectives. So we want to increase sales, generate leads, improve your conversion rates. We employ strategies and tactics that are aimed at maximizing return on investment and delivering quantifiable results. Performance agencies, we specialize in things like search engine marketing, conversion rate optimization, performance-driven advertising, database, first party, third party, data gathering, and maturity modeling and advertising. Performance agencies are incredibly data-driven. We're used by brands who are farther along in the brand maturity lifecycle. And a lot of the guys who work in performance, and I say guys because I don't have any girls, unfortunately, have less patience for creative types and almost entirely operate on a process of results, refinement, move on, results, refinement, move on. So this is very sort of generally where we are in the sort of landscape of agencies. Then you have full service traditional.
Can I just ask Michelle, in terms of the sequence of who you should be working with when?
Yeah.
How does it work? Because I think, somebody posted, I asked if anyone had worked with an agency or had an agency, and somebody said they had, and I know definitely with the evolution of the women's chapter, we have made mistakes around doing things, going with something that looked really pretty rather than having anything that had any real sort of customer journey or functionality, and where we missed a massive trick on, kind of capturing data and really understanding what the community wanted, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, how do we know what sequence to do this in, based on those different service providers that you just highlighted there? Because I think we do all come across and get approached by these integrated agencies that claim to do everything, and it's just hard to know what you should be doing when.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that's sort of the point that I'm going to make it a little bit further on in a more very specific. No, I'm going to do it in a really tactical, specific way. So I think broadly now is a good time just to say, it depends on your budget, and it depends on who you are as a brand, what you want to achieve, what you expect the outcomes to be. But I think really, when you look at everything, I want to talk about budget. And the reason I'm going to say budget is because you can waste a ton. And I mean, this example is further on in the deck, but we have a client who just was approached by a creative agency to do more creative for them in the digital space. And I've forgotten the actual cost. They're in here. They wanted to charge them something like $110,000 for concepts for TikTok, and then wanted to charge them $80,000 a month for ongoing brand concepts for TikTok. But none of that was implementation. None of that was growth. None of that was actually doing TikTok for them, managing it, posting, responding, none of it. It was literally just conceptual. And we've seen plenty of clients, startups, who get lots of startups who get big, what they think are big budgets, or they get grants, or they get investors, and they take the money and somebody says to them somewhere, you need to build your brand. So they spend a lot of money doing a brand toolkit, building their brand identity, and they find that they've spent, if they had 80,000, they've spent 75,000 on that, and they have 5,000 left to actually go out and get customers. So I'd say it's a balance. I mean, there's a time and a place for everything. And I think that as you go through, I mean, I think a brand toolkit is great, but you can also get them really cheaply from agencies who just do brand toolkits. And then spend your money on reaching out to the audience, because as you start to get to know your audience and they interact with you, you're going to get a feeling with what resonates with them. You're going to understand what sort of content they like, what sort of engagement rates you get, how many more followers you garner. And that, if you are truly in touch with your brand, trust yourself. Don't trust what somebody else is telling you need to do. You know, to some degree, you founded your brand for a reason. So you know what it is that you feel you should be doing at certain stages in terms of, okay, this feels wrong to me to spend this money on creative right now. This feels wrong for me to spend a lot of money on PR right now. This feels wrong to me to go full service. I feel like I need to get a brand toolkit and do some paid social. That's, I want to get my message out there. I want to do it the cheapest way possible at first. Social media also happens to give you the best metrics back in return when you spend money. So they're going to help you learn who your audience is really, really quickly. And then you sort of build from there. I'm not saying you never use these things. I'm saying you be careful when you use these things and just know the difference. Like traditional full service agencies, they have, they're the oldest established around. They have really great experience with every sector, but they are also the ones you're going to need to use for probably traditional media. So television, out of home, radio. We even partner with a full service agency when we have clients who say, I don't want to listen to their agency as a supplier. Can you guys do traditional media for us? We go directly to either the television, the radio, or the out of home, or we go via partner agency and let them do the traditional stuff. That's what they do well. We don't do that well, and I don't want to. So it's just important to sort of in your mind, listen to your gut instincts in terms of where you think your people are, the people that you want to find, the people that you want to convert to customers, where they live online, and what's going to resonate with them, and be sensible with your budget. As this slide says, the marketing landscape has changed. So digital and online platforms have taken over a lot. TV advertising did drop considerably against digital for about 2 years, and that was it. Not as predicted as it was about 6 years ago, I guess. The big prognostication was that television media was going to fall off a cliff. Addressable TV, addressable radio, which is programmatic, done through digital platforms, was going to take over. That never came to be. It dropped off for about 2 years, only very slightly, and has now gone right back to where it was in proportion to digital advertising. So that is still very much called for, but what you will find is that people who are exceptionally good at digital marketing don't work in full service traditional agencies. Like everybody that works with me, everybody that we know, we're really connected with a lot of other agencies and who specialize in different things. Everybody that we work with in digital, none of them would ever work for a full service agency because they're very, very good at what they do. And traditional agencies just want to say they have digital. They don't want to pay the money to build the serious performance digital teams in-house. Performance digital people who might get paid 60 to 70 grand in-house make 150 to 250 out of there. So they have no interest in working in a full service agency. So they just don't. And that's true of a lot of different kinds of agencies. People who are pure performance and really, really good at it can write their own sort of amount down on a piece of paper and get somebody to pay it. So it's just not, it's getting harder and harder for them to hire. So it just doesn't happen as often. So in conclusion, ultimately the choice between traditional full service and other types, it depends on your goals, your target audience, your budget, and the desired balance between traditional and digital marketing channels. By thoroughly assessing the capabilities and strengths of all these types, you can make an informed decision and select the agency that sort of aligns best. But this is where I have the example. So too often brands do overspend. And like I said, we had a client who, wanted to spend it was their existing creative agency. It wasn't a new one. They wanted them to spend 110 grand for a creative concept, and then 80,000 a month for the creation of organic social assets. So just the assets, they weren't going to do anything else for that. But then this particular company also spends about 100,000 a month on media. So that 80,000 a month on creative was going to cut into their 100,000 pound a month media budget. And I realized that most of us aren't on that level in terms of what we spend. I'm using them as an example because it literally just happened last week. And they sent me the proposal from the other agency and let me have a look over it. But the all the creative in the world doesn't do you any good if you don't know who your audience is and how you're going to reach them. You're going to have something really pretty to look at, but you might also have an empty bank account. So everybody sort of in my position is just very sort of cautious when it comes to saying, yes, you need creative, but there are standard creative. Actually, Michelle, I can provide it with this deck, because we have a standard digital setup PDF that we send to all new clients. And it has literally everything on there that you need to hand us access to be a client. What it also has is every single ad format size for every single, and logos for every single online ad platform. And if you know that, and you know that you have all of these measurements, you have all the requirements, you have everything that you need, it's very easy to take those. To be honest with you, there's a really great service that I can't say enough nice things about that we use called Easily. I don't know if anybody's ever used them, and it's Easel, EASEL.ly. I think they're offshored, but when we need infographics made, so some of our clients don't actually want to read reports. They want it for their board of directors. They want it in really cool infographics that match the company and their ethos. So we send them off. We have them done. They're amazing. They do such great creative work so cheaply that if you know your ad formats, you have the imagery that you want to use, and you just need somebody to make it look professional. For 60 quid, 100 quid, you're going to get something back from them that you can use in your ad campaigns. So I just think, cautious is best, because there is no data that you're going to get anywhere from any agency like the data that you're going to get back yourself in feedback and from the ad campaigns that you run on Meta, or the ad campaigns that you run on Pinterest or Twitter or TikTok. They give you demographics, they give you time of day, they give you day of week. They give you, some of them give you other brands these people may like. That's invaluable. Google Analytics tells you everything you need to know about your site, how people interacted with it. You're going to be so much more intelligent if you, in terms of being an agency consumer and an agency patron, if you go through it yourself in the beginning. I know it sounds painful, but if you or somebody in your company has that time and inclination, you're going to be so much better informed that you're going to save yourself a fortune, and you're going to get to market and get interactions from your audience a lot quicker. Did that answer the question, Michelle, or did I go on too much?
No, that answered the question. And thank you for that recommendation. Because I think that's really handy to know. One of the things I think that's challenging when it comes to ads and things is knowing all the right formats. And I think obviously lots of people use Canva for that kind of thing, but to know that there are providers out there that can help you generate those assets. You don't need to pay an agency a fortune to do that. I think Stephanie's asking for the spelling. Is it EASELY?
It's I'd have to actually type it in my browser. I think it's EASE.ly. They have a .ly ending.
Okay, amazing.
But I will Google it before the end and send it to you, because if I start typing it, my browser will come up, because we use it quite a bit.
When you've been talking, Michelle, I've been thinking about something that I hear a lot within our community, and particularly for those that have just started up, or who've kind of done all of the initial website work and bringing their concept to life, is there's that, the idea that when you start a business, you think all the hard work is getting everything set up, and then you realize after that actually the hard work comes when you have to market it and go out and find people to buy your product and service, or attract them to you to do so. And I think that very much applies to a digital strategy, is that, I think to keep coming back to that less is more, and that it doesn't need to be shiny and perfect from the beginning in terms of how it looks and feels. It's more about saving your spend for when you need to monetize it and get a proper return on your investment. And I think that's something we could do with remembering.
Yeah, that's a 100% true, and a great summation. Really, it's how many of you can say that you actually know high quality content versus something that somebody did on their own anymore? If a person's incredibly creative themselves, and because I'm not, but if you have a vision for your brand, if you know what your brand looks like to you, feels like to you, should look like to you, you can produce at least a creative brief to somebody like Easily, or to a smaller or even a freelance creative person who literally depends on you and people like you for a living. To me, that's a better alternative than a big agency, because look, working in agencies, one of the other reasons that all of us left is because we had to build in 15-minute increments. every week. Only when I got to vice president level could I stop billing in 15-minute increments. But every Friday, I had to have a spreadsheet submitted of 45 hours and 15-minute increments and who they were billed to. So you are being billed for bathroom time. So I just think, you know, if you can find an independent creative person who has a good portfolio, who has a good reputation, who can provide you with some recommendations, if they're a freelancer, they literally count on you, their reputation and word of mouth. And they're going to be a lot more understanding, flexible. They're going to work with you in terms of your vision and what you need. So if you're still not comfortable enough to do something like easily, if you don't have the imagery, for example, or you don't have, you know, anything to really provide to them, use a small independent person. First, there are loads of them out there, and the pandemic produced even more of them because so many people left big agencies during the pandemic to start up on their own. There are loads of smaller creative independents and freelancers around. But it just, you know, I think the idea for me, if I had an investor, or if I had my savings and somebody said, this is going to cost you X amount, and it was more than 30% of what I had to put into the business in the first year, I would question that. I would say, you know, how is this going to give me a return on that investment? How are you going to determine for me what the ROI on that is? And it has to be something that actually reaches people, because if it doesn't, then, you know, all the creative in the world is not going to do you any good if nobody sees it. So when we talk about that and where you are, we're really going to talk about where do you think you are? Where do you think you are in your brand journey? So obviously these are pretty straightforward. So brand inception, beginning stages, the focus is on establishing a strong online presence and identity. Very straightforward. Brand growth, as you mature, your needs are going to evolve and you want to encompass more slightly advanced strategy and technologies within the entire full digital stack. When you get to maturity, the real problem, not the problem, the challenge, I think, is stagnation or complacency. You start to see some bigger brands getting kind of repetitive, getting kind of lazy with their advertising, not engaging their audiences the way they were. So it can lead to a loss of competitiveness, but it's crucial to stay informed, adapt to changing trends and consumer behaviors, and stay on top of some of the more advanced technologies that will help you then go out and not only maybe build an identity for your audience who's grown a little bit bored with you and sort of change that a little bit, but also go after new brands and new audiences that you've never approached before, and find yourself new marketplaces. So we're going to talk about now what matters when, which is sort of what you alluded to, Michelle. This next slide's a little overwhelming, so don't freak out because I've broken it down beyond here. But I think this is when I said, you know, this is a takeaway. This is something for people to really just keep. When we talk about brand inception, brand growth, and brand maturity, if we were going to break that down to what you would need tactically in the digital space at each stage of the growth, this is what it would look like. We would, you know, and this is, trust me, there's, you know, probably 40 subtext lines that could go underneath each one of these in terms of the specifics, but broadly, this is sort of what we would recommend. When we talk about brand inception, it's website development, you're setting up your social media, your SEO technical setup, which I can't stress enough, content creation, paid brand awareness, but awareness only, not conversion, not anything else. Your audience, you want a single audience and you want broad targeting. So what this means is, so obviously the ecosystem is comprised of a lot of stuff. One of the things that we've seen a lot, especially with smaller companies or startups, or even some really big ones, actually, a really big one in the States that we just came across, their ecosystem is not set up correctly. And when I say it's not set up correctly, I don't mean just one individual thing like their technical SEO as their foundation wasn't there. And again, if I had to pick anything out of here, I would say get your technical SEO set up right from the outset on your website. But it wasn't just that, it's their entire data feedback system wasn't set up right. So yes, they may have had a website, their social media set up, they've had some SEO, but not technical, but the foundations really weren't in place to get them to help them grow and succeed. Things like they didn't choose a good CMS, which is the framework the site is built in. Is it WordPress? Is it Squarespace? Is it, you know, Shopify? Is it Magento? They also didn't have analytics installed. If they had analytics installed, they didn't have it functioning correctly. So they didn't have goals set up in it. So a goal could be downloading a brochure, filling out a contact form, buying something, adding something to cart, but not buying it, dwell time on a certain page past a certain number of seconds. These are things you want to know, and you want to know them from day one, because it's telling you how your audience is behaving when they get to your site. And we come across all the time people who don't have these technical fundamentals set up. You need this because this is your data, you own it. GA is free, okay? Your website's probably not gonna be free, but Google Analytics is free. And it will literally run as a thread through everything that you have, your social media, your site, your ads. And it will tell you so much about how people behave on your site, your audiences, even the audience who dwell for longer than 13 seconds on a certain page versus the audience who abandon cart versus the audience who buy something. These are just the fundamentals. This is getting your ecosystem set up correctly from the very beginning of everything. Because until you have that set up, you're not collecting anything. You're basically, it's like a sieve. It's just bleeding data that otherwise is really, really valuable to you. Your first party data that you collect as a company is one of the most valuable assets you have. And maybe I should have put, again, this is just such a huge topic overall that we had to narrow it down to what we could. But when we talk about first party data, we mean your followers on social media, people who have bought products from you, people who have signed up to your newsletters, people who have signed up to your email list, people who have given you their details and consented to be contacted from you in any shape, form, or fashion under the rules of GDPR. That first party data will help you model lookalike audiences from now until eternity. You have got to gather and protect that data. So getting your ecosystem set up correctly from the outset is the best thing that you can do for yourself. When we look at brand growth as time moves on, you obviously want to optimize the website. It'll need ongoing optimizations, not just for content and for SEO reasons, but possibly to align with new target audiences that you might find. You might add pages, you might add things that are relevant to people that you're finding coming to your business who you didn't originally expect. Social media growth will demand planning via content calendars and community management, while SEO will become more sophisticated and operate as a part of your proactive brand marketing activities, which is what it is. And with all of that in place, coupled with the above, it's going to be time for you to begin using your own data to help define and refine your most valuable audiences, and put that into practice with engagement. So back here, we're talking about awareness. And when I say awareness, when you run campaigns on paid social or even on Google Ads, actually, you can define your audience as broadly as you think it is. So even if you know that your target audience is women who are 23 to 55, who live in these specific postcodes, who have interests in these specific brands, if that's probably too narrow for somebody just starting out. So if you just start out with women between these ages who live in the United Kingdom for an awareness campaign, and then narrow it down from there. When you get to this level, you'll have enough first party data in terms of who's actually bought from you, who's provided their details to you, who follows you, who engages with you, to actually start modeling audiences based on more specific demographic points and details. That's the reason that we push this so hard in terms of this is your data, you own it. You're not paying anything to get this data, so you really need to make sure that it's set up correctly to collect it. This is where you want to get to brand engagement. So instead of just making people aware, you want to start to build lead campaigns, conversion campaigns, buy now campaigns, shop now campaigns, learn more campaigns with specific actions that you want people to take. Those actions should be set up in Google Analytics as a goal so that you can see how that operated. It's just slight maturity on from the first iteration of this. SEO strategies will become more sophisticated in terms of not just the technical SEO, but actually the keywords. Keywords will evolve over time, and that's okay. And I think that's a question we get a lot is, what do we, these are the keywords that we think that people are searching for now at the moment, but your report a month later said this. That's because times change. Times change, publicity changes. You could be marketing a product that somebody else wore, used, etc. in the last intervening 30, 60, 90 days since you had a report. And suddenly there are new terms that have appeared because they mentioned your product in a different context or your category of products in a different context. Therefore, people start searching for it in a different context. So, this dress was just this dress. Now Nicole Kidman wore this dress and it's being searched in a different way. So there's so many different reasons that search terms and content and social media needs evolve. A lot of it's under our control, but the vast majority of it is in the hands of the consumer and outside media. As we move on to brand maturity, we're talking about website enhancements. So once you reach this level, again, it's really important to make sure you don't get complacent and that you don't get stagnant in your brand. You should know your core audience. You should know your most valuable audience. You should constantly employ ways to keep them loyal and engaged. This may be an individual SEO strategies, social media strategies by persona. This is something, obviously, we're a persona first agency, so we actually do audience identification before we do anything else. Because if you know who you're targeting and you can actually sort of develop that in your head, you're going to spend a lot less time and money from the outset. You're going to have advanced SEO, content personalization based on segments, ongoing CROs, conversion optimization. So we've gotten people to the site. Now, how do we want them to behave to make sure we convert them to being a client? You're going to have advanced use of first and third party data to inform your activities for your current audiences and to help you drive strategy to acquire new ones. Wrapped within all of this, you've got things ongoing like SEO changes and search engine changes from the big search engines. Obviously, Google is still dominant. It's about, I think, 95% of traffic here. They make updates between 20 and 25 times a year. So it's not just that your site is going to need refreshes because of you may be changing your direction, or you've got a new product, or you've attracted new clients and you want to provide content specifically for them. It might be because the search engines have completely changed their algorithms, how they're going to crawl your site, what they believe is best practice on a page. They score you constantly based on the content of your page. And it's on a page basis, not a site basis. So these are things that you have to keep in mind in terms of ongoing needs. SEO is not a one and done. Content is not a one and done. Content personalization is not. This is an evolving sort of life. And I say this every time we talk about a website for somebody. When you build a website, you're building your 24/7 employee. And I think that's really how you need to think about it. That's the employee that can work for you and make money while you sleep. It needs to be as informed as it can possibly be. The content needs to speak to the brand as best as possible. It needs to speak to your target customer as well as possible. And it needs to portray not only who you want the brand to be, but what you want the brand to do for the person who's visiting that site. And wrapped around all of that, you want to collect all of that data, because all of that data is going to teach you to do more and better target audiences, increase your revenue, and just garner more information as time goes on. Was that too fast, Michelle? Because that's pretty straightforward, I think, but there's a lot of detail in here. So I don't know if there are any questions around all of this.
I did have a question about what CRO is.
It's conversion optimization. So conversion optimization is a sort of a subset of user experience on a website. And it's basically, their conversion optimization specialists are highly specialized in what they do. And they basically say, so if we look at this page, I mean, I could go to a different site now, but they would say people respond better to a red button instead of a blue button. They respond better when it's down here. And it's all based on testing layers that are laid on top of your site. There are all sorts of website testing tools that can be layered on top of your site that heat map behaviors and show you how people interact with your site, where they dwell the most, what color buttons resonate with them, do a lot of A/B testing through the site, what messaging resonates with them better. So instead of hiring an agency to say what message resonates better, change your strap lines, change your call to actions, change messaging for 80 versions and serve up 2 different versions of the site and see which one garners more engagement. It's a very, I mean, I used to be honest with you, it used to really get on my nerves years ago, but when it first came along as sort of a subset and a specialty, but they've proven their worth. It's almost the psychology of websites. Wow. Yeah, it's fairly in depth. So, any questions around any of this?
Yeah, I mean, I just, it's really interesting to see it broken down in that way. I mean, because slide 12, is that the kind of overview?
The overview.
And then each of the others goes down into more detail for what you need when. I mean, I think that gives a great roadmap for how to keep yourself on track around what you should be doing when, but also to help you work out what it is that you need.
I also think maybe this one is more telling because it sort of shows, whereas I break them down to sort of explain them. But when you actually look at the progression across here, it actually makes more sense, I think. So you develop a website, you optimize it, and then you enhance it. But really, you set up your social media and you manage it, but then you also do advanced strategies. So this is getting this set up right technically from the sort of ecosystem point of view. Managing it is interacting with it and managing it like a community. Doing content calendars, planning your content, make sure that you have responses within a certain amount of time. How many times a day do you post? What's most appropriate time of day, day of the week, etc. And then advanced strategies are things like splitting out the personas. So you post at certain times of day for this persona who interacts with your brand, a different time of day for others. So that's when we get into the really sort of advanced, mature brands who have a lot of data. And let me explain, a lot of this is not just based on where you feel you are or where somebody told you you are. It's really how much data and feedback you've had, because everything that's informing all of these is the data and feedback that you possess as a brand. The social media and how you behave, that's going to be how much information you've already garnered that's helped you grow in your social media maturity. Content creation is certainly the very same thing. How much feedback and interaction you've had on your site that you know what content works, what content marketing strategies work, and what content personalization strategies work based on the sort of people who interact with your content and buy your brand. This one to me is probably the most straightforward, because when you start, you want people to be aware of your brand. Once they're aware of your brand, you want them to engage with your brand. Once they engage with your brand, you really want to get into paid data-driven and CRO-driven campaigns for conversion. You really want them to convert here instead of just being engaging. Or that's great. You know, I had 3,000 likes. Wonderful. How many of them actually bought anything? None. Now it's time to convert them with paid data-driven and CRO-centric ad campaigns. And then when we look at audiences, single broad targeting for awareness. Be sort of as non-specific as you can without being too specific, because you really want to get the feedback of who the people actually are who interact with you. Then once you've got to, and this is the rule of thumb, which, you know, just for people who want to know, all of the ad platforms will model audiences for you once you hit 1,200 people in your audience. So for an example, if you have 1,200 followers of your profile, 1,200 likes on your likes or follows on your page. If you have 1,200 email contacts, you can upload a list of 1,200 people into Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, TikTok, and it will say, here's your list from your email list. We found, out of 1,200, we found 800. Would you like to target this audience? Yes. Okay. And the next will say, would you like to target an audience that looks like this? Yes. And you can say anything from a tolerance of 1%, 1% difference, which is the lowest you can go. I want a 99% likeness to my audience. They do it reverse, which is really confusing, but you want 1%, up to like, you know, I don't care how like they are, but we never go beyond 3%, which is 97% the same. It will model the audience for you based on your customers. And that's the reason we say collect your data. It's so valuable, because it's not just going to allow you to then market back to those people. It's going to allow you to build a lookalike audience against that same original core audience. And, you know, once you get to the level of being able, if you, for example, so if I had a list of 1,200 and Instagram, it said it matched 1,100. And then it said, do you want us to build a lookalike audience from this? And I said, yes, and a 2% variance only. It's probably going to give me about 6 or 7 million people to target. So it's not, this is not going to give you just like 20,000. It knows so much about all of us. The largest holder of all of our private data in the world is Google. Number 2 is Meta, and not by much. They're not second by much. So when it comes to advertising, they know enough about you in terms of the touch points of how you behave to know that if you have 1,200 people who look like this, they can give you 6 or 7 million who look the very same, who you never would have gotten in contact with otherwise. Does that make sense?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's quite incredible to think that you could land up with that many, you know, leads, qualified leads, essentially for your business based on who you want your audience is.
But that is, yeah, it's so important. I mean, I beat it to death every time I talk to clients, but it's so important. Protect it.
So in terms of data, that's one of the questions that I had actually. What are the common pitfalls? And I know we touched on this in the first masterclass, but for the benefit of those that weren't here, that you see with people not capturing just the basic amount of data, because I think that's one of the mistakes that a lot of us make is, like you were saying, having Google Analytics in place. Like, what are the sort of basics that we should have in place in terms of capturing data so that we are putting ourselves in the best position to really understand our audience and not waste money when we come to target them?
Google Analytics is number one. I think it's shocking to me how many people either don't have it set up or don't have it set up correctly. That is when it's worth paying somebody. If you don't know what you're doing yourself, pay somebody to do that for you, because you want to set up goals. And when I say goals, you want to set up what matters to you. If you're trying to sell a product, add to cart, purchased, add to cart, didn't buy, purchased, ordered a brochure, gave us their email address, dwelled for longer than 30 seconds. Okay, so those are the 5 big buckets. The reason you want to set up these goals is because then it will automatically segment your audience based on those goals. And you can look at that audience and say, the people who ordered my product, you can go to demographics and say they were females, they were this age, they lived mostly here. Great. That is my audience who is interested in that product. Who gave me their email but didn't buy anything? What do they look like? Who dwelled for 30 seconds but didn't buy anything? Who added to cart but didn't buy anything? What do those people look like? So I would say 90% of the websites that we look at and the GA that we look at for people don't have their goals set up or don't have them set up appropriately. There are standard goals that come prepackaged, and they did an old GA, they don't GA4. And a lot of like lazier SEO people would just accept the bog standard goals, but they're not appropriate for everything. If it's not an e-commerce site, then putting a purchase as a goal is not going to matter to your website. So you need to think about what you think, what you would perceive as a positive behavior on your website. What do you think would be a positive? So, I mean, they didn't buy, so what they added to cart, you can still get data on those people. So you need to really think about the actions and get someone to set up the goals in GA so that you can segment that data properly. You need to have your meta pixel on your site to collect all of your data between how interactions behave between your your meta, whatever social media you have, whatever social media accounts you have, they all have pixels. Pixels are little data catchers that go in the back end of your site that create fire. They fire every time somebody interacts with your site or your content from Meta or to Meta, and that will build audiences for you as well. Ad campaigns, so definitely get all of your pixels installed from any social media presence that you have. One of the best ways, and I know that not everybody can afford it, but one of the best things you can do is run a little campaign and get the feedback. And I said this just recently to somebody, Instagram, even though Meta bought it, you still can run very easy we have Business Manager for Meta, so we run almost everything out of Business Manager. But you can run just a small Instagram campaign from the Instagram app itself. And if you do that and you choose your own demographics and you choose your budget and you choose how long you want to run it, the little demographic feedback that it gives you just from that little campaign is amazing for such a small little tool, for such a simple thing. Meta will give you the same if you run it through Business Manager for Facebook and Instagram, but it waters it down because Facebook does not share the same level of demographics that Instagram does. So if you want really simple feedback on who your audience is and who's interacting with you, run a little ad campaign. And I don't mean a lot, like, 5 to 7 pounds a day for 2 weeks. It may be anecdotal at that level, but it might also give you enough insight that you can then go, okay, I'm going to slightly adjust it because it looks like this is who our audience is. I'm going to run a second iteration of it and just see what those demographics look like. And maybe I think I do actually have a diagram somewhere on how to run your own Instagram campaign. If I do, I'll send it through to you, Michelle, and you can share it, because it's a really simple thing to do. But all of the ad platforms will give you some degree of demographic feedback. Twitter actually gives the best demographic feedback. I find their new ad format so annoying that we've pulled all of our ad spend from there until they sort it out. But in terms of getting actual demographic feedback, theirs is still some of the best. I don't know if that's going to change or what's going to happen, but for now, there are very simple ways to sort of get your own data and reclaim your own Identity. So just quickly before we run out of time, I just wanted to get into how do you measure success? So we talked about all the different stages. These are just rules of thumb. So we talk about brand awareness. How do you judge that in the early stages in inception? Reach and impressions, brand mentions, the sentiment around that, the traffic from brand campaigns. So if you run a brand awareness campaign, how much traffic did you get to your site? You're going to know that from Google Analytics. The social and media engagement with the brand, you're going to know that from your social profiles. Content marketing, how much traffic did you get from the content? Time on page and bounce rate. So this again is a top line metric. These are both top line metrics in Google Analytics. It'll tell you how much time on site, time on each page, how many people bounced at what percentage. Lead generation conversions, same thing. You're going to know yourself if somebody makes a purchase. But if you want to know people who did add, didn't convert, that's going to come from Google Analytics as well. And then content shares and engagement in terms of content marketing. When we talk about social media, it's really straightforward. Engagement rate, follower growth, reach and impressions, and then ultimately conversion rate from social media. Conversions from social media, that's the reason I say install the pixels, because unless you had those pixels installed and installed them pretty early on in the process, it's not going to be able to build enough history, traffic, and data to actually provide you with it. I don't care what they say, it doesn't, they don't work day one. We always put the pixels on as soon as we build or rebuild a site, because they don't collect correctly from day one. They really almost need bulk to get them going and providing the data feedback that you need. But conversions from social media should show up in Google Analytics, but they're not always accurate. So you really want the on-platform data as well from the actual platform itself, whether it be Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, TikTok, whatever. And then for SEO, organic traffic growth, I mean, this is just the easiest thing. Like, you know, SEO is working if people are searching for you organically and they're coming to your site and they're converting into a client, or they're spending a lot of time on your site. Or if they search for you organically as a brand, they find you, they go to your site and they keep coming back to your site and they spend a lot of time there. Keyword rankings, the keywords that you want to rank for. If you started off on page 3 of Google search results and you're now on page 1, that's success. Your backlink profile, that's a little bit more sophisticated. Backlinks are links that you have on your site that link back to other companies who have a similar interest, who have promoted your brand, who you've done co-branding with, who is an organization that you're affiliated with. Backlinks are so important from an organic ranking point of view. I could get Chris to do a whole other talk on that, but they are, for a while, probably 13 years ago, they had sort of a bad reputation because people were selling backlinks. And so Google, of course, as they always do, quickly figured that out and got rid of that as an option. Backlinks need to be high value. And so high value is, my brand was mentioned in the Sunday Times. So I'm going to put on my site that I'm going to link back to the Sunday Times article. That's a valuable backlink. What it's really doing is adding credibility, both to the page that it's mentioned on and overall domain authority to your domain. So these are just really, really important things to have on your site if you can. And then the conversion rate from your organic search. Obviously, if people are finding you, spending time on your site, then are they converting from your organic search would be the next step there. SEM, so that's just search engine marketing. It can be any form of paid search engine marketing. Click-through rate, cost per click, conversion rate from paid search, and ROAS, which is what we talk about at a very higher level spend, return on ad spend. What is your return on ad spend? Did you spend, and again, this is not something you do sort of at brand awareness level. You do this once you get into the engagement level and beyond. I spent, $1,000, but I got $2,500 in sales. And, it's a 2.5, it's a 2.5 return on ad spend. So I'm really happy with that. So these are just ways to sort of look at what you're happy with in terms of goals for moving forward. And then CRO, which Michelle asked about, it's really, is this working? This is really all about conversion. This is about getting people to your site, making them convert, making them become customers. So conversion rate, average order value, shop cart abandonment rate. So if your average order value goes up, your shop cart abandonment rate goes down. A/B testing results have a clear winner, either A or B, and then that actually yields more results. Then you know that your CRO efforts were really worthwhile. And again, I just put these in here as really sort of high level things because it helps educate people to know what to expect, what to ask for, how to spend, etc. But then also there was a question that came by email before the call, and I think the person, I could go back, I don't want to go back into my email now and read it out loud, but the question was basically about I have my website, I have my brand, I have a lot of social media profiles, but how do I build credibility so that people have the faith to buy from me? And I think what I saw in that question was a couple of things that I just want to sort of use as an example. So credibility comes from reviews. There's just no question about that, whether it's Trustpilot or Google reviews or Facebook reviews or whatever the case may be. Credibility comes from reviews. So if people have a good experience with you as a customer, they bought from you. So you obviously have their email details. If you have their email details, send them a follow-up email and say 10% off your next purchase in exchange for a review. Moderate the review yourself. There are all sorts of tools out there that allow you to moderate the review before it's posted, so that if you decide that it's something that maybe isn't the best for your brand, you don't actually have to share it. But reviews are so important in terms of people trusting you. I mean, what do? Think of how you behave as a consumer, and that's what I tell everybody who starts their brand, builds their website. You're all on social media. You all spend time online. We're online right now. You know how you behave as a consumer. So when you're thinking about how you want consumers to interact with you, think about how you want brands to interact with you as a consumer. That's what you do. You're a consumer. So how do you want to see them present themselves? How do you want to be treated? One of the other things that I saw in the question that was sent to me was brand affirmation. When we talk about brand affirmation, what we mean is, if you are called the women's chapter on your website, you better be called the women's chapter on every single social media profile that you have. Not some iteration of it, not some subversion of it. If we are Thoroughbrand, we are always Thoroughbrand. We're not Thoroughbrand something else anywhere else. You have to be very, very consistent in your presence because it becomes confusing. I will say that the more common your brand name is, the more that becomes an issue. But overall, that's almost brand affirmation and brand recall is how people in advertising measure brand awareness campaigns. So if I wanted to measure a brand awareness campaign, I would say, how many mentions have you gotten online? If you had 50 at the beginning of the campaign, it'd be 500 at the end of the campaign. Your campaign has been a success. But then we also have ad recall, which is where you set random people in a room and show them an ad or a profile and say, how many of you have seen this? You might have even seen surveys on Instagram before. Instagram does survey people occasionally and say, do you recall seeing this ad? I had one from American Express last week. Instagram sent it to me and said, do you recall seeing this ad? I hadn't recalled it. But ad recall is a huge way of measuring brand awareness campaign effectiveness. But when you think about not wanting to spend any money, if you have your brand called the same thing and your logo consistent across every single version of your presence, even if you're not spending money and people come across you on a website, on Instagram, on Pinterest, on TikTok, they're still going to start to see you a lot. Even if brands within, say, like the women's chapter start to share you, if you're shared, if the women's chapter shares your brand and somebody sees that brand somewhere else, that's brand affirmation. Brand affirmation is seeing the same thing over and over. It's always consistent. It's always the same logo. It's always the same name. And that's massively important. So those are the two things that I would say in terms of establishing trust is be consistent with what your brand looks like and what it's called in every single possible place that it is, and get your reviews. And if you have to incentivize people for reviews, then do it because it's worth it. I think that's all, unless there are any other questions.
Yeah, there was a question about pricing, but I wonder if that's, something that, Joanne, I guess it depends on what stage you're at. I don't know, Michelle, if you want to try and answer that quickly. I know we are at time, but we've got like 1 minute.
Oh my God, there are 13 things in the chat. I'm so sorry.
No, don't worry.
Oh, you had a wisdom tooth pulled out yesterday. Yes, I had a tooth fall out on Sunday. So thankfully my dentist is my best friend. I also got it fixed on Sunday. CRO, yeah, did that. I'd love to know about budget. On digital spend, like I said, it really depends. Like we spend, it depends on what your goals are, right? If you already know who your audience is and it's highly defined and you have enough data of your own, you can spend 15 to 25 pounds a day and still get really good results if you know who your audience is, because you're not wasting impressions and you're not wasting money. You know exactly who it is that you want to advertise to. So I think they can be very, very, I think specific. I'm sorry. Yes, it is easily. Thank you, Michelle DeClerc. Did I miss anything else in here, Michelle?
No, I think we managed. It was just some comments and things. I was kind of posting a couple of things as we went along.
Yeah.
But everyone, thank you for joining us. Michelle, do you want to put your camera back on again so we can just see you and say hi? We will follow up. There you are. We will follow up with and I'll add myself here as well. Oh, I can't. We'll follow up with the recording of this, because I think if anyone, following the presentation, if you've got any questions, Michelle, is it okay if people get in touch?
Yeah, of course it is.
We will send out a follow-up with this, and I'll put Michelle in copy so that you can reach out to her if you do have any more specific questions, or maybe there was something you didn't want to raise here in front of everybody else, and obviously circulate the slides with you. But Michelle, thank you again. I feel you always give so much in these presentations, which is very refreshing, because I think I probably speak on behalf of everyone else that goes to webinars, that a lot of the time it's just kind of clickbait. So really, I've learned a lot today, and I thought I knew a lot of this stuff, but it's really great to see it, and especially to understand from a kind of process perspective where we are, what we need, and so that we can be really focused, because that's always the key message that comes across when we talk about digital and conversions, is to not have a scattergun approach, to really be focused, to know your audience, to understand the stage that you're at, to really be clear on what it is that you want to achieve, and allocate your spend accordingly from there, rather than trying to do everything all at the same time.
Yeah, there's no reason to do everything all at the same time. Take it in steps. If you're committed to your brand and you're not going anywhere, there's no reason to rush, and don't let anybody rush you.
Amazing. Someone said properly straightened out. Thank you. Yeah, I would say that that's a very good summary. But Michelle, thank you so much for sharing so much of yourself as well as your insights today. It's a great privilege to have you here, to have you in our community, and to be able to partner with you in this way. So thank you very, very much.
Thanks for having me.
Someone asked, yeah, and we will be sending you the recording, so don't worry, along with the slides. Have a wonderful afternoon, everybody, and thank you very, very much, Michelle. We'll be in touch via email, and anyone that has any further questions, you can send them our way or contact Michelle directly. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Bye.